6.1, 6.2, and 6.4.
I could use a second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries. All right, first thing on the work session is temporary outdoor seating areas for restaurants on private property. Kathy, have at it.
Unmute Kathy.
Oh, that's right. It's not, oh, man. You can't just touch the screen. Sorry. My laptop, you can touch the screen. All right. Sorry. As everyone knows, Wednesday evening, the governor issued an executive order that loosens up restrictions currently in place for restaurants, bars, and social clubs that serve food. At present, these businesses are restricted to just takeout or curbside pickup. With the new order that goes into effect today at 5, it allows dining on the premises, but only in outdoor seating areas. Several health-related criteria were put in place to enable this outdoor dining. One, that the staff need to be wearing face coverings. You have to have 6 foot separation between the dining tables, 6 foot max at the table unless the people are from the same household. No buffets in these outdoor areas. And then the staff have to disinfect the table between each seating. So yesterday morning, the city staff jumped right on this. We met to figure out what can we do to enable these businesses to do this immediately or as soon as practically possible. For public property, if people want to dine on the public sidewalks, particularly downtown, we already have a process for that. And in fact, there's many businesses that already have outdoor dining. That's our sidewalk cafe license process. So we have something in place for that. It's a very quick process, and people are used to using it. For private property, we had an issue though, because we need an emergency order adopted by the mayor and council to relax the land management code provisions for temporary use permits. Because currently you'd need a 3-week public input process and a time limitation of only up to 30 days with the possibility of 3 30-day extensions. So we don't know how long the executive order is going to last. So it needed to be loosened up. And people want to be in place much sooner than 3 weeks from now. So with the proposed emergency ordinance, it would authorize the zoning administrator to approve a temporary use permit for outdoor dining on private property for the duration of the governor's executive order. When the temporary permit expires, they would need to remove these temporary outdoor seating areas because we're kind of loosening up what we normally require to enable these temporary things to happen. If someone wants to make their outdoor dining permanent, they would have to come forward through a regular site plan process, and the outdoor dining area would have to meet all the code requirements. So what we've got before us today, if the mayor and council are ready to adopt it, this would enable staff to work with people immediately to try to get them as soon as possible with their outdoor dining areas on private property. I'm here for any questions.
On hi Kathy. You said on private property. What about if on the sidewalks is public property? How is that affected?
If their business fronts on a public sidewalk, then they would go through our existing sidewalk cafe license process, which you go through the engineering department for that.
All right, and that'd be the same if we were to close a lane or close all of Potomac block of it or 2 blocks with a sidewalk cafe.
Yeah, typically people don't currently put outdoor dining in the street.
front of the average person.
But if we were to make the street available, yeah, we would see it going through the same process because we need to know where they plan to lay it out, how that would be laid out, all of that information.
But it would fall under the heading of a sidewalk cafe then.
Yes.
Okay.
I say do whatever you need to do as quickly as possible to get them with as much seating as possible. So I'm in for whatever you guys need to do.
Same here.
Yeah, I am too. Let's I think let's let them get the tables out as quick as possible. What about the request for tents? Some,
They would need to get a tent permit for a tent. And we've been contacted by one business so far, and we've alerted them to that information, what we would need, because it needs to make sure that the canvas material is fire safe. And then there's other issues that we look at, like how they're going to anchor it into the ground. So once people supply us with that information, we'll turn around as quickly as we can, but there are safety issues with tents that we have to review.
okay.
I just have one quick question. The farmer's market and the outdoor dining for that, have we thought through that, or are we going to need to think through that for this Saturday or even next Saturday?
I must admit that did not come up. It's on public property. So I'm not sure.
I mean, I guess, not eating inside is one thing, but if you want to take it out and eat it at your car, I suppose. I just didn't know if it was thought through or if someone wanted to sit in the lot or something. So, and I don't know if it needs to be addressed right now, but, maybe if we think about it for next week.
I think we need to keep our fingers crossed and hope that next Friday, more restrictions are lifted. That this will go fast and we won't have to do this for long.
Does anybody know, are the restaurants, are they having any problems? I know they specified that they would have to take temperatures of wait staff before they begin their shift. Getting the infrared medical grade thermometers and that kind of stuff they're going to need to open. I didn't know if that was an issue or not, and if we needed to go through the EOC and see if they had a source of supply we could turn them on to.
It's definitely a conversation in email today. The resource of temperatures and that requirement, making sure clarification on that requirement. There was discussion this morning in our business recovery team about holding a web seminar specifically for restaurants for next Tuesday. We're still putting the final plans together for that, an announcement, but to talk just with restaurants through a web seminar next week. And then also looking at the camps, the sports camps, the day camps, and pools, having a separate web seminar just for that industry group on the same day next Tuesday. So more to come on that.
I'm wondering, Jonathan was here with us, but Jill, you can share this with him. If there's any possibility that some of the money from the CARES funding could go toward separate grants addressing COVID-19 issues such as infrared thermometers and those kind of things and other PPE. I know that I shared with Scott today an email from a supplier who may have a connection to get us get those in this area what they need, and in a timely fashion. And but at least we have that connection in case we need to take that avenue.
Right, and
Are you on the line?
if I could also add that the grant program being administered by the county in partnership with the city, the application process opens up at 8 a.m. on Monday morning. That is up to $10,000 for businesses, nonprofits, a range of groups that can utilize that for operating expenses, which includes the expense of equipment such as PPE to help get them restarted. So making sure that our viewers at home, businesses are aware of that grant opportunity.
Yeah, I've been sharing that like crazy for everybody who's not to make sure that they jump on that very first thing and, have all their ducks in a row so they can go ahead and apply for that as soon as that application time opens up 8 a.m. Monday morning. Anybody else have anything?
Yes, I do. This is Kristen. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Kristen.
Sure. Great. So I hear everybody saying, yeah, let do whatever you have to do. My only questions are going to be associated with any potential liability to the city as being the authorized entity of saying yes, move forward. And I'm a little bit, I just want to understand a little clearer what our role is in saying yes, move forward. Because what I have before me are three documents. One is the governor's executive order, the amended, I think it's the 7th Amendment, which outlines, looks like roughly 2 pages worth of steps that a restaurant needs to proceed through in order to provide this alternative seating arrangement. And beyond the executive order, there's a second document entitled Best Practices for Businesses to Reopen Restaurants and Bars. And I believe that's from the Maryland Department of Health. And that's about 2 pages of stuff that includes criteria that the restaurant has to confirm is in place in order to open. And then the third document is one I sent you guys, which was a draft we're kicking around over here, meaning in Frederick County of an application process, for this temporary purpose, which I'm assuming probably reads a little like our sidewalk one. So when I look at these documents, one of the things you have to do is develop a plan, i.e. a checklist, to ensure that their staff are properly trained in understanding the current COVID-19 workplace guidelines. I don't know who's going to make that determination or whether there's some confirmation process. In my mind, I'm thinking like when a bartender has to be, I think it's TAM certified. I don't know if that's the right term. Another is the 6-foot separation from patrons that are traversing on the sidewalk. So is there going to be a 6-foot space between the tables themselves and then the walking path of the sidewalk from the traveling public in order to accommodate that, if that makes sense. There's also a physical facility evaluation. There are signs, specific signs that have to be posted by the property owner that speak to the guidelines and the rules. It also says routine and frequent environmental cleaning and disinfecting. I won't go into page 2. I guess my question is, I'm reading 3 different documents, all of which include directives from the governor's office for opening an operation. And if the city is the entity saying, yes, you can proceed, what role, if any, do we have in saying, we've checked off to make sure that you've met all these metrics?
Jen?
Well, we're going to have an application process that'll be going through Munis. And so the health department can be one of our review agencies to making sure that they're compliant with those health directives.
So the health department will be a sign-off agency in that permit process.
We can make that happen.
I'm not saying make it or not make it happen. I just want to make sure that, when somebody says, hey, your patron seating isn't separated 6 feet from the walking path of the traversing public on the public sidewalk, who makes that determination and says, no, that's got to change?
Who's going to say that? Is probably the better question.
I believe from what I heard from the health department, first of all, that they are not going to be a certifying agency. That they will be there to test, they will be there to enforce. And I would believe that the enforcement agency would have to be related to the county, either the health department or EOC. It certainly would not be the Hagerstown City Police Department.
That's what I want to understand. If we're saying, if we're attempting to accommodate requests in the public space in which we're responsible for, what does us as the governmental entity saying, yes, you can proceed? All I'm asking is what obligations do we have then in meeting or ensuring that applicants are meeting these pages of regulatory responsibility?
I think our requirement is to make sure that the private industry is aware of them, and it's their obligation to conform to them, knowing what they are. And if they don't, I believe it's the health department in the county that should be the enforcement agencies, and that's where the complaint should go.
I don't see this as much different than because there's 5 different things that came out this week, and one of them was youth athletic activities, and we already saw an email from staff today saying, hey, here's what we're going to require of those users. I don't see this as being any different in terms of our responsibilities of managing the public space for those sports related activities in parks than I do restaurant activities in streets.
I might be able to weigh in a little bit. I think we're talking about some issues that are beyond the scope of this proposed legislation, because this is really geared towards those restaurants that either don't have outdoor dining space available or perhaps want to expand what they do have into other areas that aren't normally used for outdoor dining. And Kristen, it sounds like your question is really geared more towards just interpretation of this legislation in general, because potentially we have businesses within the city limits that aren't going to utilize this legislation because they already have outdoor dining available, but they could still potentially be setting up or be taking actions that don't comply with the governor's executive order or directives. So to the extent that we're talking about how this legislation causes the city to be liable or creates liability, I don't view it as creating liability unless we craft it in such a way that we take it on. I mean, if we're just simply saying, look, during this time period, if you want to utilize outdoor space for dining, you've got to go through our processes. We are not certifying that it otherwise complies. We're just saying, look, we're suspending our land management code and from just a land use perspective, and not from a not from a infectious disease standpoint. That being said, I would defer to Lou. I mean, I don't know who would otherwise be the policing agency for any of these restaurants. I don't think it's the city. I'm guessing it's the health department. So I don't know if we want to go down that road of, well, before we approve your permit, let's see what your plans are. Where are you going to have your tables? Or if we want to simply step back from that and just say, look, if you want to use your parking lot right now for part of your dining, you can do it through this temporary process.
So, and I hear that loud and clear, and I use 2 examples just to make sure I'm clear here and understanding you. When bullet point number 6 in the directive say that you have to have properly posted communications and signage, that's not part of our process. Somebody else is going to check whether you got it, and if you end up not having it on a city street, it's not our problem.
That's my interpretation.
Right? Okay. And secondly, if somebody's setting up tables, not getting into the plan review process, if somebody's setting up tables in a manner that is unsafe as it applies to let's say, ingress and egress regulations, we're not getting involved in that. So if they don't meet ADA, if they don't meet fire safety, the way the tables are set up, that's not on us. I just want to make sure I understand that clearly.
That is part of what we will review with the application.
Which part?
The egress and those
Okay.
types of city code issues, that is stuff that we will review as part of this application. But we never review health department issues. The health department is invited to comment on building permits. And if it's a restaurant, we don't approve a permit until the health department has signed off.
And,
But we don't enforce the health department's laws.
and I'm all good with that when we're talking about somebody using somebody's private property for their private enterprise. I just want to make sure that that's just as clear for somebody using the public space for their private enterprise. That was a question.
We can have that be part of the application, I suppose, that they acknowledge that.
I just want, like I said, I just want to make sure we're not liable. Like if we're opening up the street, I just want to make sure that all that other stuff is somebody else's. Not,
Can't we require a certificate of insurance listing the city of Hagerstown as an additional insured?
I mean, I would hope that that's a minimum.
If they're on our property, I mean, we could require a certificate of insurance. It just,
I'd say if we don't at minimum require that, we're foolish.
We already require for the sidewalk cafe license that they provide us with that insurance information for when it's on the public property.
When
so
there's
I
a-
think that covers that then, Kristen.
when there's a wind down Friday and there's seating and things like that out on the street, who is liable for anything that happens on the public property, which is South Potomac Street?
Everybody has to have insurance whenever we get permits for this type of thing. We never have something on our public property, whether it's Blues Fest or anything I know of, that insurance isn't mandated.
Well, but my question was, Lou, about like on a wind down Friday evening. I mean, is that covered under the theater insurance? I mean, I'm sure it's covered under somebody somewhere, right? Or else they wouldn't allow it.
That was a Maryland Theater sponsored event, so I would venture to guess that it was covered under Maryland Theaters because they applied for the permit.
So people who have restaurants such as 28 South Bulls and Bears, Gastropub, Fino Taco, all those places who have insurance on their properties now, this could be covered under their insurance in front of their property, correct? In a public.
They're gonna have to add up.
But the sidewalk cafe license, that insurance part is required to be attached to the application.
Yeah, I think there's the bulk of the restaurants have that, or all of them that have some kind of outdoor seating, I'm sure have that in place as part of the sidewalk cafe license. The ones that are gonna have to jump through a hoop might be Broad X and Hannah Thigh, and people that don't normally have anybody outside. That gets a certificate of insurance naming the city as a additional insured or something.
Yeah, but
So-
like the Prodox is asking for their own parking lots, so you have to worry about that there.
Right.
Mhm.
For the parking lot, it's gonna come to my office for the temporary use permit.
And Hannah Ty already has a cafe license.
What about, and this kind of leads into another question that I had, what about like Pizza Pretzel? You've got the Plum, who is not probably interested in outdoor dining. So is there something that is being adjusted for those that want to continue curbside service only and don't want to or cannot offer outdoor dining?
Well, I don't think if they don't want to or can't offer it,
What?
I understand if they don't want to, but the thing is that if, right now there's free parking everywhere. So you've got outdoor dining, You're going to have like curbside service available. It could be a disaster for those that are just traveling through. So I just want to make sure that, you know, if they're not going to offer outdoor dining, I don't know. I just think that it could be a parking disaster for people.
This is Jill. We did send out an email with proposed plan for the closure of South Potomac Street, North Potomac Street, to get feedback from the businesses. So we're not prepared today to give you a summary of what we're hearing from the businesses, but at a future meeting in terms of any recommendation for the use of the public space for outdoor dining. And I defer to Scott for any additional comments.
I walked down there today, at least on South Potomac Street. I can tell you the one place that hasn't, that we've asked to reach out to is Pizza Pretzel, because they're kind of in a unique situation. But if they perhaps wanted to move up and put some tables in front of USMH, that would be close enough, and that would work under what we're discussing today. I know that Bulls and Bears at 28 South are expanding their seating out into the public space out around Masonic Lodge, also in front of the Fine Arts shop there on South Potomac Street. Cino Taco is also coming out into the sidewalk on the other side of them, making sure they don't block any doorways. I don't know what the Dieter is planning to do at the Schmeckelsstube. I know he was debating about whether he was going to do outside seating because he's got a pretty healthy pickup on Antietam Street. So I think that whole group down there, it really communicates well together. And I think they all have a coordinated plan that they're working with us on, with city staff. Cannon Coffee, I already informed you all about what Cannon is doing. They've got a nice setup right next to their place. So the GOAT, the boys aren't there this week, but they're aware. They have a cafe license, so they're already good to go. Hannah Thai is good to go. We've already mentioned the Broadex, talked to them yesterday. I think they're good to go. It's just going to be a matter of getting this out and getting it and trying to reach as many people, especially in the downtown, as we can. Kathy is going to have a special council wraps after this is over to kind of, in layman terms, go over what you all are approving today, and she's thrilled to death to be able to do that, you can tell. And we're going to put that on social media. We're going to put it on the channel. We're going to have a press release so that we kind of saturate this information out into the city. And then I'll talk more about another aspect of this after you all get done what you're doing here to get this approved.
Just for clarity, Scott, we keep talking about this 2-block area. This is for all over the city, right?
All over the city.
So I just want to make sure to get the point in, because the mayor asked, well, who's going to ask about the 6 foot of separation from the traversing public? I think of a place like Benny's Pub, right?
Right.
Which is in a shopping center, would like to take advantage of this opportunity, and likely, will and should and will, and there'll be traversing public within that center. So I just want to make sure that whatever rules that we're to abide by and to put in place in any one of these locations, that there is thought, clarity, and consistency given to how it's going to be executed at other places, so that at the end of the day, somebody doesn't say, well, went to do something there next to that place, and they have one set, and they get complained about, and then another place says, well, why do they get that lesser space separation? And they say, well, it's because it's downtown. I just want to make sure that we're not have the blinders one of the 2 blocks, and make sure that however we do it, we think about how it's equally going to be applied on all types of restaurants across the city.
What you have before you this afternoon is the policy for every business that can utilize this in the city, whether it be at Stonehouse Square, South Potomac Street, Pope Avenue, wherever. So whether and that's why we're trying to do everything we can to make it as layman clear as possible, what they will have to do in Long Meadow Shopping Center or Stonehouse Square to operate within the guidelines to be able to expand or add seating outside of their area.
That's why I wanted.
I'm sorry?
That's why I wanted clarity for when somebody complains about any one of these 6 pages of stuff, we get to say, hey, sorry about your luck, go see this entity, they're responsible.
Absolutely, totally get that. One thing though, I do want, and I think I've been muting him, but Doug DeHaven, Doug, are you on the line? Okay, let me at least, I did get an email from Doug, as far as the fire marshal's concerns. We are required to enforce the fire and life safety code. The social distancing issue is not a fire code issue. Required egress to and from buildings will be enforced by the fire marshal's office. So that it is what it is there.
Now, this emergency order covers all private property outdoor dining. So it'd be all shopping centers, all of the chains that sit out in the parking lots in front of like Walmart, all that kind of stuff. We have an existing process that covers people wanting to be on a public sidewalk.
Right.
Okay, so I hope people had their questions answered. I know that staff will have the direction that they need and do what needs to be done, and we'll have the advice of counsel, and we can move forward and do this as expediently as possible. Anything else from anybody else on this issue? Okay, so I need to get a motion to go into the 101st special session.
So moved, this is Shelley.
Moved by Shelley,
I'll second.
second by Emily. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're in special session, and it's approval of emergency ordinance, temporary outdoor seating areas for restaurants and pubs on private property.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for mayor and city council to pass the attached emergency ordinance that shall establish criteria related to temporary use of land for outdoor dining for restaurants and pubs, which have previously received zoning approval for their business location. This emergency ordinance shall be in effect for the duration of the governor's executive order 20-05-27-01.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. All right, we'll move out of special session, go to city administrator's brief comments.
Come on, you know me better than that.
Okay, you heard me.
It's Friday afternoon. Hey, I do want to tell you a couple of things because it's gotten, obviously after Wednesday, it's gotten pretty squirrely around here the last couple of days. So I do want to bring you up to speed on a couple of things. The first is I want to be try to be as clear as I can on this one. We right now have no set plans for a street closure of South Potomac or North Potomac Street as it stands right now. That is not to say we're not advocating for that or we'll do that. We are going to meet on Monday. Again, I was down on South Potomac Street today talking to people. I think we have a good plan for that moving forward. The one thing I would ask of you would be if we do decide to close the street, South Potomac Street at a minimum, North Potomac Street, both of those at a maximum, that either you allow me to make that call upon your advisement, or we have another one of these sessions early next week to allow you to vote on it. I'm good either way. I'm just trying to make it streamlined and make it so that you all are fully comfortable with what happens. So I'll leave that up to you all to tell me what you want to do. And that was a question.
I'm good leaving it up to staff to make that call. If they feel everything is ready and all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, do it.
I agree. I've talked to 3 different downtown business owners who are definitely in support of that. So do your thing.
I
I
agree,
agree.
Scott. Go ahead.
Okay, sounds like we got it. All right.
Okay, I just wanted to, and Dieter also just got an email from Dieter. He would be willing to look at utilizing the street. So, so we're good to go. We're good to go there. My biggest concern is to make it very, very clear that this is not a party atmosphere when the street is closed. This is to allow outdoor dining. We don't want this to become some, wind down light type of party. That we still have things, guidelines we have to abide by, and swear we're going to have a big party at the end of this when this is all done. And just we can't do it now. So more info on that early next week. I forwarded to you all information that Rodney had sent out to all those folks that have user agreements with the parks regarding the restrictions on recreational camps, sports leagues, and the BMX park. And the parks, as far as bathrooms in the fairgrounds, Wheaton Park and City Park are open. No others are open at this time. One thing to address with you is the fact that Rodney heard from American Pools, who runs Potterfield Pool. They will not be prepared to open up Potterfield Pool until June 29th at the earliest. We are going to have a talk with American Pools next week and see what the problem is and see what we can do to expedite that, if at all possible. The Parks Department is ready to open the pool. We just need American Pools cooperation. So there'll be more info on that next week as well. Last thing, I swear, Mayor, is that we are going to continue with free parking at all metered spaces and in the deck until August 3rd. At that time, we look to implement not only paid parking again, but also implement the new system for the electronic parking that you all approved last week. So we are moving again, as I've said, with deliberate speed on this and trying to do this the right way, but the quick way. That's all for me, Mayor.
Thank you. Shelley,
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Emily.
I'm good.
Austin,
Nothing here.
Kristen.
Yes, one comment. I don't know who all listened in on the Greater Hagerstown Committee forum this morning. I don't know if anyone else did, but I didn't hear anything significant that county and the folks from that county are sort of working through and dealing with and adjusting to significantly different than those things that we're dealing with and addressing and adjusting to here in this county. And I would just say to everyone that did listen in, that is participating in this process, the more we can focus on attempting to work through the issues that we have in a cooperative and a positive fashion and less of a political posture, I think the better off we'll all be.
Lou.
I'd just like everybody to have a very nice weekend, and if you haven't done it, please get your ballot in the mail. Thanks.
There you go. All right. The only thing I have is Scott, I'm going to hold you to the party after the coronavirus release, so that we can have a big party and everybody can enjoy themselves and actually not worry about social distancing. So
It'll be at your house too, right?
I don't even care where we have it, honestly. I don't care. So, all right, everybody have a good weekend. Thanks a bunch. See you Tuesday.
at restaurants starting at 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. So can you give me a little bit, and I know this can be a complicated process as we found out in the meeting itself, but just a little bit fundamentally as it relates to restaurant owners. What is it mainly that they need to know and what they need to do in order to be able to comply with this and to open up outdoor seating?
Sure. In case folks don't realize, although I don't know how they wouldn't, but currently restaurants are under an order by the governor to only allow for takeout or curbside pickup because of social distancing and health concerns because of the pandemic. This new executive order that was issued at 5 o'clock Wednesday would loosen things up for the restaurants, so now they could allow on-premises dining, but only outdoors. And so people who don't already have an outdoor dining area are now going to be scrambling to try to come up with something so they can open back up again. And so fortunately for many people in the city of Hagerstown, we already have a process if you want to have outdoor dining on a public sidewalk. So that's already in place, the sidewalk cafe license process. And anyone who's been to our downtown knows that many restaurants already have outdoor cafes. And so they'll just be able to start using them, but with some of the social distancing that's required as part of this executive order, as well as other health issues like the staff have to wear masks, and the tables need to be 6 feet apart, and it should be no more than 6 people at a table unless the people are from the same household. I don't know how you prove that. And then
Yeah, that's,
you gotta
yeah.
you can't do buffets out there because as you can just imagine why they don't want you to do buffets. And then you have to disinfect the table between each seating. So those are some issues that they will have to comply with. People who don't already have a sidewalk cafe license with the city will need to get one, but that's a very quick process. You submit a layout, how you plan to have the tables to show that you're maintaining proper egress and pathways so that people can still get around you and they can get into the buildings beside you. And so that's something that we're already working with a couple of businesses downtown. The issue why we had to meet today to do an emergency ordinance is for outdoor dining in new areas on private property, because that's a zoning issue. And right now, if you're going to do a permanent outdoor dining thing, then you go through a site plan process, which takes some time. If you want to do a temporary thing for like one day, we allow that as a temporary use permit. It's pretty quick and easy. But this is indefinitely. We don't know how long the executive order is going to drag out, and so we needed to pass an executive emergency ordinance to loosen up our temporary use permit process so that you don't have to wait 3 weeks to get one, because we allow public input now that takes 3 weeks, and also so that you can have it for longer than what our temporary use permit process is, which is right now it's for 30 days with a maximum of 3 30-day extensions. Again, we don't know how long this will last, so we needed to get all that loosened up. So what the council just approved today allows the zoning administrator to approve outdoor temporary dining areas on private property without going through that normal process. You're just going to have to apply for an application. It'll be reviewed by the chief code official and the fire marshal and apparently perhaps the health department.
Perhaps.
to make sure that things are as safe as can be. We're willing to be a little bit slack on like the parking if it's got to be in the parking lot, but we just got to make sure whatever is being done, it's safe. You're not setting up conflicts with vehicles and so forth. But this authority is just for the duration of the executive order. And so that means when the executive order is up, these temporary use permits will expire. And then at that point, all these temporary outdoor dining areas on private property would have to be removed. If someone wants to come forward and do a permanent outdoor dining thing because this worked out great, my patrons love it, then you'll just have to go through the regular site plan process, and it's got to meet all the codes. Like you wouldn't be able to have it in the parking lot anymore. You have to find a place on your property that doesn't conflict with something else.
And clearly, this is the determination of a restaurant owner as to whether they want to even embark on this.
Right.
And as you said, for some, it's much simpler because they already have that outdoor dining
like
area.
Green Turtle and Buffalo Wild Wings, a lot of these places already have it because particularly places built after the smoking laws changed, they all wanted to have an outdoor space because that becomes your smoking lounge.
Right.
And so it's just the older ones that don't tend to have it, or they didn't put it in later because they didn't have room that are kind of in the pickle.
Yeah, and then there are some, as you referenced, obviously why all of this is happening, the situation that we continue to make our way through is, the COVID-19 pandemic. So for some folks, they might not even decide that they want to do something like this because it might not be the most cost-effective option for them. Some people have been doing really well as restaurant owners with curbside takeaway, delivery, things of that nature, where they really don't need to open up, and this might not help them. But this is an option for a lot of restaurants now, with Governor Hogan saying that this is now allowed. Now, the interesting thing is that we're still in stage one of this recovery process. This is kind of like stage one continued at this point.
Putting a toe in.
Yeah, so there's more to come as we go along. So we're not even into stage two yet, but we're making this progress gradually. As it relates to this particular weekend, now that this will come into play at 5 o'clock on Friday, how do you expect this to go in your mind, given what you've heard from folks to this point in terms of their response to this and what they've been asking you and what they feel like they need to know in order to go ahead?
The real key is getting the word out to those folks that want to do this, that they do need to get with the city for either the sidewalk cafe license if they don't currently have an outdoor license area, or they need to get the temporary use permit to create some kind of area on your property. And if you're going to have a tent on your private property, you need a tent permit, because for tents, you need to make sure that the material of the tent meets fire safety requirements, and that the way it's anchored into the ground is not creating conflicts with utilities or vehicles or anything like that. So there's issues for safety that have to be considered with a tent that requires an extra step.
Yeah, and I think what makes this even more difficult is, several words that don't usually go together and work out terribly well, and that is expeditiously, effectively, and safely. And we're trying to do all of that, as we said, in the short period of time, which expeditiously, of course, was the first word in there. But to make all of that happen, to make everybody happy, something that we can't do on a daily basis. So this is something that's going to take a little bit of patience on everyone's part. And as you said, just relaxing these things to some degree to what is reasonable and safe for everyone.
Right, and we have the temporary use permit applications for the outdoor dining online already, so people can download those, fill them out, send them back to us. There's no fee. We're trying to do everything we can to be friendly with this, but we really need you to go through that process. I anticipate that there's probably going to be some people who go, oh, I didn't realize, and things are going to be popping up all over the weekend, and we'll just have to deal with it next week. But we did get everything in place by 5 today. It's just, we've only just now got the ordinance, and so we haven't, even got any applications in yet for private property.
Yeah, and I don't think people understand how much has already been considered when it, pertains to coming up with a plan like this. It's almost simple in a way for the governor to say, okay, here's what you can do, have at it. But at the same time, every jurisdiction needs to come up with some semblance of a plan. And I think, as Councilman Alshire was sort of alluding to, he's been privy to one in a different jurisdiction, has some experience based on what he's heard from them and what they've implemented. And I think we're all just in the middle of a learning process here. But as you said, we're just trying to get these restaurants back on their feet to some semblance of a degree right now within this process. So we're all just working together to try to make that happen. But we're also listening to them to find out what it is that they would like to have us do, if we can possibly do it.
Right, and we'll do what we can to help, because many of these private places, there would be a site plan in our files, so we can dig that out to help you figure out where a 25 by 40 tent or where your area can go. So then it helps with the review agencies, which we've already done that because of an inquiry for TGI Friday. And so, as those come in, we'll help as we can, but we do need to go through the process.
And again, where can people find this information if they need to reference something, quickly, or if they want to even pore over it? Where can they go to find that?
If they go to the Planning and Code Administration's website, there will be, the application forms are already up online. We created those this afternoon, really.
Okay, and I'll be putting a press release out here before the day is over. So
Great.
it's, as you helped create, and really Kathy did almost all the work on this, as far as coming up with layman's terminology as to how all of this will be
Right.
laid out. People can.
An extra step people may not realize is if you're planning to do alcohol in these outdoor areas, you need the liquor board approval. And if they grant you the approval, in order to do it, you need to fence the area that you're going to have your outdoor seating. So that's a step you shouldn't forget about, because you don't want that slap.
No, you definitely
That doesn't come from us, but it'll come.
Right, yeah, that big hand will come down on you in a hurry. So, well, thank you for your time, Kathy.
sure.
Much appreciated. and hope everyone has a great weekend as we continue to move through this. I think we're starting to get to the other side of it. Again, this will take a little bit of patience, takes a lot of common sense, but we're doing everything we can here on this end, and we intend to listen to the restaurants and the businesses along the way too, and as we work cooperatively to make all of this happen. So thanks for watching Council Wrap today. For Kathy Marr, I'm Wes Decker. So long, we'll see you next time.